Drake Maye.
Yes.
You said before we went on the air, you've talked to some coaches around the league about Drake Maye.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. These last several weeks talking to coaches for these teams that are preparing for Drake Maye and what they're seeing from him and what they focus on as they get ready for him. And so, if you're the Titans, you're admiring his arm strength as he goes into that game, and you're understanding, okay, we're going to have to actually make sure there are certain instances here where we need to GTFB. Get the F back because he can push it down the field. He's not afraid to. If you're the Bears, you're comparing him to Josh Allen. And that was the name that came back to me talking to some defensive coaches in Chicago. The body type is different for sure. Drake Maye 6'4", 225. I think Josh Allen is 6'4", 6'5", 240, 245, something like that.
He's not as big. Look, he's not going to put his shoulder down like Allen did in that game and knock someone over. Right.
But the style of play is what they were referencing is similar. The way they scramble, the way they try to finish those runs, the way they're willing to test any throw on the field. And so they were really worried about him. What was interesting about the Rams and the opinions that I got back from the Rams on Drake Maye was they were already noticing some of the intangible stuff that Drake Maye brings to the table and how it maybe is rubbing off or how it might rub off in the future on his teammates. And so they called him a fighter. And they just liked the way that the style of play that he brings to the field in terms of the actual quarterbacking of it, meaning if there's extra yards there on a scramble, he's going to try to pick him up. If there's a rush, if there's a free rusher bearing down on him, he's not afraid to absorb that hit and still make a throw, which we saw him do a couple of times against the Rams. So that was interesting to me, talking to Rams coaches, that they're already sort of noticing this intangible stuff and how much that might help the Patriots moving forward. Because when you have a quarterback who's willing to play that way, who's willing to exhibit toughness in the way that a quarterback can limit toughness, the ways in which you could do that at that position are obviously really limited. But the fact that he's already showing some of that stuff, they think could be a big benefit to the Patriots moving forward.
Is it fair to say, because people they knew he was a great athlete and they knew he had a great arm, is it safe to say he's exceeded expectations this season?
Yes. Well, I'll just say for me.
For me, too.
And I was as high on him as anybody. I
with me.
called him the best quarterback prospect in this year's class, and it was mostly based on his ceiling. It was what he would be 3 years from now, not what he would be as a rookie. I thought Jaden Daniels, and I still think if you had to pick based on their performance this year, either Daniels or Maye, you'd probably go Daniels.
I would pick Daniels or Nix, but they both played way more college football than he did. I mean, if I had to win,
in the last month, it's been a lot closer.
No, I know.
Jaden Daniels built a nice lead while Drake Maye was sitting on the bench. If you just look at their last 4 games, you might pick Drake Maye.
We just had Dave Rich on, and I guess Jaden Daniels is hurt. He's playing hurt, so whatever. But
you can tell based on the rushing numbers, they've come way down.
Yeah,
it looks like he's trying to protect himself.
But honestly, if I had a game to win tomorrow, well, I also would want Sean Payton if I had Knicks. But I might take Knicks over Maye. But certainly not for the season, and not certainly maybe for the season, but certainly not for next season or the season after. Maye's obviously a way better prospect than him. But I didn't think that it was. I didn't think he was going to be any good this year, and I thought everyone was going to get on him, and it wouldn't be fair. I thought that he was going to, the offensive line was going to be terrible. He'd be running for his life. He'd be throwing a lot of interceptions because he was looking to do too much. All these things that we've seen from other rookie quarterbacks. I thought it was a great draft pick, obviously, and he's way exceeded my expectation.
The rate at which he's improved, I know, has really impressed people with the Patriots too. So whether it's the fundamentals of the footwork, understanding the rhythm and the timing of the offense, whether it's now in the last couple of weeks, this is something that we really didn't, in my opinion, see all that much, for instance, against Tennessee, but now last week against the Rams, you saw it a lot, and the difference is only a handful of weeks. Things like throwing the ball away when there's nothing there. That to me is the sign of a maturing quarterback, especially for a guy who can extend plays as long as we know he can extend them, who can create yards with his legs when things break down, and he'll still do some of that. But the fact that he understands, okay, it's probably smarter for me to put this in the first row, when I don't think he understood that like a month ago in certain situations, it's pretty remarkable, in my opinion, for a guy who's as young as he is, who only had 26 college starts, as Fred's mentioning. Jaden Daniels at 55. Right. Bo Nix, I think, had close to 60 college starts. These guys should be and are so much better developed when it comes to the in-game decision-making, but you're already seeing Drake Maye make leaps and bounds as far as that goes, and doing it in a short period of time.
Because of this amazing learning curve, which you guys are talking about, have we reached the part of the season where there are disappointing losses now for the Patriots? Earlier on in the season, they'd go out and lose games. They're like, oh, they didn't have a chance. At least they kept it close. But last Sunday was certainly winnable. Are we at that point of the year?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's good to start holding them to a higher standard. I still will never say this is a good roster.
Sure.
Based on the roster talent.
But he covers up a lot of warts.
He does. And to me, that should force the rest of the organization to be more urgent with everything they do. Because he's ready. He's ready to compete right now. He's going to be ready to compete next year. And so if you thought this was going to be a slow build toward getting the quarterback ready and getting the roster ready, and then maybe by year 3 everything's hunky-dory, everything's fine, and then I just think you need to show more speed when it comes to getting this stuff together, whether it's coaching, games like the games you're talking about, John, or putting the roster together.
Yeah, it's exciting, but I don't want to – we'll talk about it. I wouldn't panic putting this roster together. Don't
there's
put
no,
the cart before
there's
the
no
horse.
panic, but next, Phil is going to tell us where to focus that urgency first.
All right, I'm just going to tell you, put a governor on that thing.
That's a tease.
Call all your friends. Hold on. Turn on Toucher and Hardy. Phil Perry's going to say, they got to be urgent. Wait, what are they going to do first? What should they do first? That's what you're going to do. You're going to tell us.
And he's going to take that Patagonia quarter zip.
I like it when Hardy bosses me around like that.
Yeah, he's
know why,
definitely a
but,
dom.
yeah.
A little
He's
slap and
definitely a
tickle.
dom.
Good for you.
I'll chase you around a little bit.
It's very important to know what you
That's
like
why
and
he's
you
got
don't
those
like.
puppets. He uses those puppets as an excuse.
They had him out earlier this morning. He was very excited.
Yeah,
about
well,
those.
listen, I appreciate it. We owe James Stewart a great debt. He has helped us a great deal with some things to do so. All right, we were talking about the development of Drake Maye and how he is even better than people thought and more NFL ready than people thought. You mentioned how that hastens the process. Like, you got to start putting more talent around him. And
on a
Hardy,
few
you had a
draft
question.
picks, yeah.
Where do you start?
Like, where do you start it and how do you do it? Like, do you go free agent? Do you trade? Do you trade picks to get an established receiver? Obviously, you're drafting. Like, where and how is it the most urgent?
Priority one.
Here's how it go timing-wise, right? So timing-wise, just on the calendar. Free agencies first, then the draft. Then if you're talking about big-time trades, to me that would come after the draft, Fred. You're going to have maybe a top 10 pick. It looks like for sure you're going to have a top 10 pick in this year's draft. You're not going to want to trade that pick. What the pick you might be willing to trade is the pick in 2026. Okay, first-round picks in 2026. So if there's a player who's going into the last year of their deal in 2025 and you're willing to trade 2026 picks to get that guy, that would come after the draft. So that's just the timing of it for me. Free agency, draft. Then if you whiff, for example, on your receiver that you're really looking for, that's when you go and you make your trade.
So what are the odds that you pick up a left tackle in free agency, or is that not your first priority anyway?
You're not going to get one.
You're not going to get one. So what are you doing in free
You're
agency?
probably not going to get one because those guys don't, generally speaking, change teams all that frequently. The ones that are in their primes that are still really good.
Used to be the quarterback. Now it's the left tackle.
No, you're not going
to
get a left tackle in free agency because the reason that left tackle is leaving is going to be because that the team doesn't want him. You can get a Tyron Smith who has let up more sacks.
Oh,
than
you
anyone
can get
else on the line.
left tackle.
Yeah, you can pick up.
You're not
going to
get the one that you need.
Yeah, you're not going to get a left tackle to take you through this process and make you a Super Bowl contender.
All right, so free agency. What do you do?
Well, listen, I would be looking at tackles just to see if you could get one. There's one who just changed teams in Cam Robinson, who just got traded. He's set to be a free agent this coming year. So
how old
are the Vikings desperate to bring him back because they just dealt for him? He's 29 years old. He's not he's not an all-pro. He's not like but he's a good, solid left tackle in this league.
But if you take him, you got to draft a left tackle, so you would just, why would you take a mediocre left tackle and sign him in free agency? Would you do that above playing
just to make sure you're covered there, Fred? Because the likelihood of you finding your left tackle in the draft, to me, is maybe even worse than in free agency. Because not only are there not that many, especially in this year's class, if you're looking specifically at the crop available to you, but it's a little bit of a projection. Left tackle used to feel good about those guys that had the right frame and the right pedigree in terms of the school they came from. Now you're dealing with guys that barely take legitimate, true pass sets on a regular basis because the screen game and the spread offense is become so popular at the college level, and you have guys that don't run block all that much or all that well because you're not running all that much or all that well at the college level. And so projecting at that position has gotten a lot different. To me, it's easier to project a receiver. Yeah, so if you have a top 5 pick and you have the opportunity to get a Travis Hunter or a Tet McMillan from Arizona or somebody of that ilk that you feel like is worthy of that draft slot, I might be more willing to go get the star receiver in the draft and just see what I can make happen in free agency.
Yeah, there's one elite tackle in the draft according to what I'm looking at right now. And what do I know about who's coming out in the draft? But you do have to draft a tackle.
Yeah, Will Campbell is the guy that you're probably looking at, and I've talked to guys that aren't even sure he's a tackle. In the NFL.
That's the thing I was reading.
Supposedly has short arms.
He's a guard, and they like that Texas kid who
Cameron Williams.
Apparently he projects to be a tackle, but as you were saying, Phil, how good he is not known.
So it's just not a great year. Like I think I want to say there were 7 tackles drafted in the first round last year. I just don't think it's that kind of draft this year, unfortunately for the Patriots. So I try to get an immediate stopgap at tackle in free agency, Hardy, and then I'd be drafting for a receiver. You do have enough money, Hardy, where you could pay a receiver and a tackle. Like that is not out of the realm of possibility. And so they should be going. They should be going after guys like T. Higgins.
Okay,
Chris Godwin is going to be a free agent. Those would be the kind of guys that I'd be keeping an eye out for.
I have a question. This is a fun one. Okay. If you're sitting at 2 in the draft, say Jacksonville's got the first pick, you got the second pick, and Travis Hunter is on the board, and someone wants you to trade down. Someone wants a quarterback at 2. You have the opportunity to get Travis Hunter at 2. You have your quarterback. Is Travis Hunter the kind of talent that you would stick around for? Because he'll play receiver. I mean, you could have him play receiver. Is he the kind of talent you'd stick it to for and take? Or would you want to trade down for lower picks but more picks?
The smart move would be to trade down. I, as a football watching person, like the quote-unquote horse. And so if you could get a guy that will be one of the 2 or 3 best players in the draft and feel really good about it, as opposed to taking 2 players that might be in tiers 2 or 3 of this year's draft class, that would be a tough decision for me. Now, the thing about Travis Hunter is that he might be primarily a corner. I think there are teams that have this sort of Marcus Jones role envisioned for him. Not that he's Marcus Jones talent-wise. He's better than that. But that he would be a full-time corner, and you might use him occasionally at receiver. Would that move you off the spot at all in terms of wanting to take him, Fred, for a team that needs a receiver?
It's funny because he is an equal prospect at both positions.
Can you play him both ways?
Yeah, he's supposed to be.
Can you play him 60 snaps? 65?
No, not in the NFL.
Not like the 80 he's doing in college.
No. You can't play him both. But what you could use him as, like he's saying, you could use him as a corner and then put him in as a gadget guy, and he's 10 plays on offense. That's a fun tool to have, though. Like that's the kind of thing coaches want. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the coaches loved Ben Simmons, because he's like a big point kid that could handle the ball. Like they're obsessed with him, his defensive abilities. That's like what Travis Hunter would be for a coach. I just find him to be a fascinating prospect. And he's a good kid too. Hard-working kid.
I like the cut of his jib. I do.
Boom. I do.
Yeah. No, I do.
He seems like a really football-focused kid who's developed himself into this exceptional athlete. Like he has great natural skills, but he's developed. I'm very high.
My instincts would be not to trade out of that pick.
I would do the same thing, my friend. I would not trade out of that pick if there's an elite kid, He's the best player in the draft. If there's an elite kid there, and you're going to get him because number 1's a quarterback, and you're going to get him at 2. I'd take him too.
I don't know if number 1's going to be a quarterback this year.
I do. I think so. There's teams desperate like that. I think someone's going to trade up to get Cam Ward. I think
could
that
be
someone
Ward.
will.
Could be.
I don't. I think Cam Ward's going.
I think he's going to have a dynamite end of the season and dynamite pre-draft process for that to happen. Dude, because I just feel like that. Based on people that I've spoken to, it's just not a good quarterback class. Some of these guys, they're not even sure they're first rounders. Never mind.
But by the way, we didn't think that Penix or
by
Knicks,
now though
Knicks
knew
were going to go in They go in the first round. We didn't think so.
Well, okay. I thought the name I was jumping the gun a little bit there. I thought the name you were going to mention was Jaden Daniels because before going into his senior year, nobody thought he was anything close to it.
Cam Ward's like it would be a Jaden Daniels situation because he kind of came on late. He's not Jaden Daniels by any stretch of the imagination. No. But is he an NFL quarterback, though? Is he could he be a top 10 quarterback? Because you got to trade. If you think he can be a top 10 quarterback in the league, you got to make that deal. You got to go up to one and take him. You have to. But if you think there's a bunch of even talented quarterback, then, I mean, a lot of guys have hurt themselves this year. There's no question.
Yeah.
I mean,
a kid back in Georgia, especially.
Back in Georgia, what's his face in Texas?
Ewers.
They've all hurt themselves this year.
It's not great for the Patriots because you'd be dying right now
for
there to be that quarterback prospect that Fred is talking about.
A bunch of firsts
or 3 or 4 of them in case you end up where they are right now. I think they're scheduled right now to pick at 6. Right? You would love for there to be 4 quarterbacks on the board that everybody's dying to take, and there might not be one. I'm just telling you.
Are you in the mind that you go if you have a top 10 pick that you're going offensive line, edge rusher, or receiver? Like that's like that. No matter what your needs, like you're going edge rusher, offensive lineman, or receiver.
I think it's hard to say right now because I'm not sure.
Or corner, which you don't need.
Yeah, I think you take a premium position. When you're drafting that high, you just take a premium position. You've got quarterback already checked, obviously.
Right.
So it should be one of those. There should be somebody who's talented enough to be worthy of that spot. Again, it's hard to say. Is there some generational tight end that I don't even know about right now that,
I think
is going to blow up the combine and, looks like a top 10 pick?
But would you have but think about that. Like Pitts turned out to be a good tight end with Atlanta, but do you think he was worth the draft position he was in?
And I think he's just sort of been okay.
Yeah, I know.
He's been a disappointment.
I think he's been a disappointment too. Mel Kiper kept going on and on about how that was the best kid in the draft. And, that's the danger of taking a tight end that high, is that even if they're really, really, really good, it's your offense. It's, how well can they block? I mean, for all the Gronkowskis and Kelseys, I mean, think of how many good tight ends are in the NFL that just aren't that big a factor comparatively to other positions.
Well, and how about the guy who got picked at number 13 overall this past year, who maybe should have been picked a little bit higher, as a matter of fact, Brock Bowers, who's like setting records for the Raiders right now, and he's on a bad team, and it doesn't matter, but he looks like...
Right, but that's
a legit big-time tight end.
Because there was talk of like the Jets taking Brock Bowers, and the thing is that's like a luxury pick but Brock Bowers is an elite tight end, and that's going to be great. We'll see how much that means to the Raiders going forward.
I mean, he's got 70 catches for one of the worst teams in football.
Exactly, and then we'll see how that ends up working out for them and how good Vegas is building around Brock Bowers. We'll see that. You get a solid foundational piece on your line, or you get an edge rusher. I think that's more effective. Go ahead. You said something?
Hardy's team took a good tight end, good young tight end.
It worked out really well for him. I wanted to ask.
He's not doing anything this year.
I wanted to ask about the Patriots' offensive line. When will we?
I call him LaForda. Fix or repair daily. Kaboom. Don't worry about it. Go ahead, Johnny.
No, I'm waiting.
Go to break.
Play it or not? You gonna play?
Cut that part out.
No, don't cut that. That was a solid one. All right, go ahead.
Christian Barmore just showed up at practice. He played last weekend. Cole Strange showed up at practice yesterday. Some needed help for the offensive line is there. When will we see him, and where will we see him?
I think all of that is still TBD. I talked to Strange a little bit yesterday before going out to that practice, and he was excited just to get out there, and I think it's big for him, psychologically, honestly, just to get out there and be able to play, knowing the kind of time and work that he's been putting in just to be in this position to be able to practice. So I'm not anticipating that he's going to play this week. It was a significant knee injury. He hasn't practiced at all. I said the same things about Barmore coming back, and then he ended up playing. And so I think we're going to try to gauge it on a practice-by-practice basis, but I think they would love to get him back out there. The question to me is, where do you play him? Do you play him at center because he's been working there?
I'd rather have him at center. Ben Brown did not look good last week.
He has not looked good. I would also say Michael Jordan has had weeks where he has not looked good.
Ben Brown gave up the quickest sack in the NFL this season last week.
Did he really?
That sack, that
Did they
strip
track
sack,
that on next-gen stats?
That strip sack fumble of Drake Maye was the fastest NFL sack of the season.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen.
I would play him at guard. You got to let him get his feet under him. That's all.
And I'll say the offensive line has been a lot better than people expected. I mean, then
I think
Maye's
the quarterback's
sensation.
making them look a lot better than they are.
All right, fair enough. You listen. I'll take your word for it. Phil Perry, he covers the Patriots for NBC Sports Boston. He was kind enough to wear a quarter zip today because Hardy wasn't wearing one. And when you get 4 white guys in a room of our age, there has to be someone in a quarter zip.
There has to be someone not wearing a hoodie.
It's the mandate.
Exactly. And preferably a quarter zip.
Yeah.
Because it's business cash around here. We want you all buttoned up.
I'll bring one next week just in case Hardy didn't bring his.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.